Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm back with my old college roommate, Andy, and we continue his first time reading of Worm by Wildbow. Andy, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good. I don't know that I'll ever be able to eat Jello pudding again after some of the stuff I'm going to be going over, but overall, it's going okay. For this time, we're going to be reviewing Arc 18, Queen, Chapter 8, and the final two interludes. And as far as new business, I have a special guest today, a very special guest. Tony will be joining us again. Welcome, Tony, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
And we have some questions and comments, I believe.
Yeah, just a couple of comments this time. Tony, welcome back. Glad to have you with us once again. Appreciate you sitting around and zooming in and listening to a couple of old guys talk philosophical about this piece of literature here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the best. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's one of my favorite stories.
We've got two comments from Johannes E. and from Megafire 7. So we're going to start with Johannes E. And actually, Andy, this is the second part of a question or of a statement that he gave us last episode, but it would have been a bit of a spoiler to give it to you then. So I'm going to share it with you now. And Johannes says, speaking of Noelle's mental state, her eating disorder, probably bulimia or something similar, is pretty blatantly reflected in how her power manifests, eat and purge. It's awful in a whole other level, a mental illness made physically manifest in one's own body and with visceral biology and permanent form flaunting her deepest insecurities for all to see, all the while forcing her to do it again and again and again. Her turning animalistic and feral is probably a mercy. What do you think about what Johannes has to say, Andy?
That's an interesting take on it. We were kind of figuring that she had some kind of disorder like that. And as you said, these next few bits will kind of confirm that. I'm trying to think, other than, there's nothing in the animal world that I can think of like this. I mean, feral, I guess, makes sense, but it would be interesting, things like eating disorders are pretty much just human, right? I mean, we're the only ones that worry about whether we look a certain way or whatever. Animals are just do what they want. So if she becomes animal enough, will the disorder kind of go away? Would her power change? I don't know.
Do you think he's speaking in terms of just losing herself as she flirts with
so.
Later in the interlude? I think it is. Wildbow does. And maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying. I think of it just in terms of her just losing the fight against the entity and her mind just going completely. And that may be a mercy.
I agree with you there. And yeah, I think that probably would be a mercy. But again, it seems like a big part of this story is just the way whatever is causing the powers kind of combines with the host, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, certain things are amplified either for good or for ill, and certain things change sometimes multiple times. And so it'd just be interesting and I don't know if the psychology of eating disorders is all that well understood, but if that part of her kind of went away enough, mm-hmm. if the behavior would change.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The compulsion. Yeah. If her personality gets crushed enough,
right,
and what's driving it is this compulsion, and then the compulsion goes away. I don't know. It's just speculating.
Interesting. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. On Andy's earlier comment though, eating disorders do exist in the animal kingdom, but they probably don't manifest themselves the same way that anorexia does because of like all the social views that are unique to human society, right? Because we don't have any understanding of animal perceptions within their own groups, or if there are others, social animals. There are, I think they do studies on rats that do exhibit certain types of eating disorders and things like that.
Okay.
But I don't think it manifests itself in quite the same way. Like usually at best, it's like, I think like depression leading to them not eating. But things like appearance are probably more unique to humans for sure.
Cool. All right. And next we'll move on to Megafire 7. I've always enjoyed how Taylor spent so much time working up to being able to kill Coil mentally. And now, when she's finally pulled the trigger, quite literally, she finds herself forced into a position where she has to kill a lot more. Like she's being forced to face that decision again and again and again. And I'm thinking that Megafire is referring to the fact that she has to kill so many of these clones over and over again. Andy, what's your take on this?
That's how I interpreted the comment also. And I think there are a number of interesting aspects to this. One is the way Wildbow points out that the clones aren't just kind of mindless robots. They apparently have feelings. They have their own thoughts that are maybe magnified versions or uninhibited versions of the original that they were cloned from, but it still has this mental processes going on besides just it's not just like a missile that's been pointed at a target and just goes and does its thing. It's thinking about stuff. And yeah, I think Taylor, it's kind of like when you're playing video games. At first, we had things like Battlezone where you're just firing at these tanks that are just geometric constructs, and you're like,
right.
Oh, this doesn't seem that violent. And then, okay, then we'll just shoot robots like in Robotron. I know I'm going way back here, but then you're shooting cartoon characters or whatever, and it's like, oh, well, that's not that much different than Bugs Bunny show or anything else where the coyote blew himself up or whatever.
Right.
And then eventually you get to the point where, yeah, you don't care. You're just shooting everything. You're like, well, maybe I have been desensitized. But yeah, she seems to be like able to say, all right, well, they're just clones. They're not this and anything. And then, oh, wait a minute, they are having thoughts and maybe feelings. And okay, now I feel even worse about this. But the thing that I wondered about too was, we talked about the parallels between Noelle's clones and Skitter's swarm.
Right.
And then Noelle kind of took over part of the swarm. I wondered if Skitter felt bad killing the bugs that had been taken over and that were stinging her and stuff. She hasn't expressed much feelings about the bugs in general, but I just wondered if, there was kind of a parallel there as well.
Tony, you want to chime in on this before I express a thought?
I don't think Taylor would feel anyone. I think she felt more bad that what she since she lost control of them, like these harmful bugs are now kind of out and potentially hurting other people. Like I think that sentiment was clear, that she really regretted making the mistake of allowing Noelle to have those bugs in her control in the first place. But I don't think she's as upset about the bugs themselves being destroyed so much as losing control. Being a master, I think, is a big part of like her identity.
It's true. Okay.
Yeah, that's well said, Tony. I think that kind of encompasses the direction that I was going to move in with that. So we'll just let your statement stand. Thank you, Megafire. Thank you, Johannes. Please keep the questions and comments coming. We love hearing from you. And now we'll move on to our review for this episode, starting Queen 18.8. And we find the team right where Skitter does realize the implications of having let her swarm settle on Noelle, using them as a tool like she normally does. You see an opponent, she sends her swarm, she tries to assess them physically. And let us not forget the fact that she's blind, so her swarm is her only quote unquote visual aid. And now this is where she's discovered that she's had all these deadly poisonous bugs being absorbed into Noelle, and Noelle is using them and spitting them back out, just like the human clones, just like the rats. Now she's got evil bugs swarming around and going to be causing problems.
Funny enough, no changes to the wasp behavior.
No, pretty much, other than just go find somebody and sting them. Yeah, that's what Taylor has them do. So that's not much of a change at all for them. Taylor gives herself some self-recrimination for this, what she feels is a mistake. And Gru, being an effective lieutenant, says, hey, don't focus on that. We acknowledge the mistake. Let's move on. We'll make up for it, which I think is pretty much in keeping with his personality. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it totally makes sense. I mean, not to take anything away from Skitter's swarm, but in the face of a baby Endbringer, it's kind of like, yeah, nah, it's kind of a hassle, but come on.
Pretty much. Right. So the team is going to split up at this point. Tattletale's going to head back to her place, says, hey, I'll take Imp. I can do more good with a computer and a phone, which is true. And later on, we discover in the interlude what she's been up to at her base of operation. Skitter and Bitch head on to try to rescue some of the people who are being physically assaulted by their clones. And that was a whole unpleasant description from Wildbow. Tony, Andy and I, upon occasion, get pretty squeamish when it comes to the description of the kind of some of the body horror that Wildbow writes here. You don't have too much of an issue with that, do you?
No, I think kind of growing up with a lot of hyper sensationalized media, it's more just like, oh, that's cool. Like, that is like, it's brutal. Like, I recognize the brutality of it, but it doesn't really make me that squeamish. Some things I think do. Wildbow does pull it off sometimes, but for the most part, I'm just like, oh yeah, like like he always just goes hard. That's
when Rachel and Skitter get to the clones that have started laying into their primaries here, Skitter makes an observation, and Andy, I want to direct this at you. She makes an observation once again that Bitch has Bentley kill and Bastard only hurt. You want to speculate on her reasoning there at all? Did we touch on this before?
I don't remember bringing it up, but as I was reading this, I just figured that, the base that Bentley is from are domesticated dog. So they kind of have some of the wildness bred out of them already. But Bastard is a wolf and very undomesticated, and not being a huge pet trainer or anything. But if it were me, I would be worried that if I let my wolf I was trying to train to be a little bit more mellow, I let it have a taste of blood, that there might be no hope of ever domesticating it after that point. So, if it actually killed something and felt like it kind of got that predatory satisfaction, I guess, then there just might not ever be any going back.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I saw it. Tony?
Oh yeah, 100% agree. That's my take as well.
This is where Skitter discovers that these clones have a certain level of sentience. We knew this from the arc with the Travelers,
right?
That they at least had the intelligence enough to speak, and that they were, as you said, guided missiles on a specific mission. But this shocks Skitter, understandably so, because Ballistic didn't share this information. Now, Ballistic would have known, wouldn't he, that these things were at least capable of speaking, and maybe it didn't occur to him to mention, oh, by the way, these things can't talk, and don't be freaked out when it happens.
Yeah, he definitely would have, because yeah, they had to go on hunt and kill missions to clean up after various messes. But yeah, I don't know that. I mean, we were talking about squeamishness earlier. I think, maybe Ballistic didn't want to lay that on people. It's just
Mm.
like, hey, you're going to have to do this, and best you just think about them as brainless clones. I guess my hope was that as Noel was pumping more and more of them out, they'd be less and less sentient,
Hmm.
almost like stuff that was coming out of the oven too fast or whatever, not fully baked. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's the case.
No. And at one point, Skitter curses Noelle for making her do this, for making her have to actually kill. This is where she's trying to reason with the fat clone that was defending, quote unquote, Steph. This messed with me my first read through because, again, you didn't expect this. Yeah, we know from the previous arc that they spoke, but this blind rage that this clone seems to have, where Skitter says, well, what happens after you kill this person? Well, I'm going to kill more people. And they have a single-mindedness. Is that specifically from Noelle, from her creating them? Or is it from some latent inner hostility from the original person? Tony, do we have any indication one way or the other?
I'm trying because I have an
Okay.
idea of this, but it would go a little bit into
All right.
spoiler
Keep it vague.
territory. So I think that I guess the simplest thing I can think of is the clones operate on their primary motivations, seeing the other clones as kin and regular humans as other. So they just are purely violent, and I think that helps Taylor compartmentalize like killing these clones, because after that conversation, if I recall, she just like the clones just like, yeah, like, well, I love this person, but I'm gonna kill I'm gonna kill my family,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna kill like I'm gonna kill like everybody that I know, just because it like for whatever reason that's how they got rewired. They're just gonna go after anyone that's not I guess from Noel, even if Noel doesn't have direct control of them. And like Andy said, a guided missile is kind of a good way to put it. Like they are kind of driven toward one goal, and that is to just like destroy as many people as they possibly can.
And without giving spoilers, and if you can't answer this without giving away too much, then don't worry about it. Will we be getting more detailed explanation of that later? Is there a part that I've forgotten from my first read? Will something be made more clear in the near future?
I don't think so. At least nothing
Okay.
that I remember off the top of my head. Granted, it has been a few years
Okay.
since I've read one, but I think the extra thoughts that I had do stem from like information we
Okay.
get later, especially with like where the powers come from and why they
Okay.
have the
Gotcha.
powers.
Okay.
Yeah, the other
Go
the other
ahead.
bizarre thing about this was, to Tony's point, how much they are, yeah, splitting the world between us and them, the
Mm-hmm.
clones and the non-clones. At one point, Skitter even says, what about the thing you were cloned from? Is he a soldier? And the guy's like, no, I kill him too. And you're just like, what? Oh, it calls him a waste of air, a waste of life. I was like, wow. So yeah, it's like all the negativity in the person has been accentuated. And then yeah, this bond to the other clones is there. He loves the Steph clone more than he loves the original Steph, because she looked down on him because he was fat.
Mm-hmm.
But then Taylor even kind of identifies,
I
where
was
she's
just
like,
about to go there with you. Yeah, please
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead then.
No, no,
No,
no. Go ahead and expand. The only thing was I was going to roughly touch on that. Were you surprised by Wildbow making that comparison in Taylor's mind?
I was a little bit, but then in retrospect, it's kind of like, he keeps bringing in little little mirrors or little clues about how these powers integrate not only with a person's mind and body, but also their emotions. And so if I were in Taylor's place, I'd be pretty disgusted that this was kind of thrown in my face like this. But
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, wait a minute. I can think of a time where I wanted to just wipe out everybody with my bugs because they were all a bunch of low life scum.
Mm-hmm.
And so how am I that much different than this clone? And oh man, that's not cool. I didn't need that right now.
Rachel and Skitter make a pretty effective team. They take care of the clones. They save some civilians, and then they end up regrouping with the rest of the team. And some reinforcements have shown up. Some folks that Tecton knows from one of the southern teams shows up, some flying heroes. And then also the travelers show up. I guess that's a little bit later on. How did you like Tecton's use of an antlion pit?
I thought that was pretty cool. But before we get to that, you had touched on a little bit how pulling the swarm back was really hampering Skitter. And I like the way Wildbow described that now she's just got these kind of different, it felt like me without my glasses on, it's just, you see blobs of different things, and except it doesn't sound like she's even seen color very much. It's just muddy blotches of light and dark. And so I almost wish that she had said, hey, Gru, without my swarm sense, without everything else, here, you take the baton, because I just don't feel like I should be doing this. But she's so beat up and everything, you can't expect her to know that she should have maybe
or
let
is she
somebody else lead.
Is she being stubborn?
Well,
I hadn't thought about that.
She definitely has a stubborn streak, that's for sure. And but she also has kind of a compassion on others, that, hey, it wouldn't be fair for me to just dump this off on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of things probably in there that are kind of battling. But as I was reading this, I was thinking, man, shouldn't somebody else be directing things that could actually see what's going on? But
yeah, because at one point Grace even picks up on the fact that she's asking, what do you mean? How come you asking us what we see, kind of thing?
Right.
Tony, help me out with the timeline here. So less than 24 hours earlier, they had the confrontation with Coil and the rescue and whatnot of Dinah. The attack of the Merrill debate, wasn't that like the day before? So she's only been blind for, what was it, like 3 days now, is it?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. All I do remember is that the whole story, it moves very fast.
Yeah.
Like this is like there's only been like I think a couple of months, like a few months from the beginning to where they are now. Like they are moving really fast. And so yeah, the events with Coil, were not long ago.
So I asked that by way of forming a question to you, Tony. Do you think she should have turned over temporary control of the team? Or, I mean, the team still seems to have complete faith in her ability as leader at this point still, even though she is blind.
No, I mean, I understand the willingness to want to give someone else who might have any ideas a chance to step up. I can see why they would still want to stick with Taylor. I can see why Taylor would want to switch. Like if she doesn't feel like she's at 100%. So, sometimes even if you are the de facto leader, sometimes a good leader also knows when they might need to.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at both sides of that. Should she have willingly given up, or should someone have suggested it? But again, the team has faith in her. Everything was moving really fast, and maybe there just wasn't enough time for them to even entertain the idea of, well, hey, should you let Gru returned temporarily or something like that.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're seeing obviously things from Taylor's POV, and then we need to hang on to some of these actions and what's going down, because in the Noelle interlude, Wildbow comes around and closes a circle, and we see from her POV as to events that were happening at this moment in time. I wasn't really sure my first read how effective Tecton could be. But again, this is another one of those situations, Andy, where I see myself getting what he was accomplishing a lot more than my speed read through the first time. Did you have any more appreciation as the further we went into this chapter for Tecton?
Definitely, yeah. As I was first reading it, or at the beginning of the passage where he's pounding the ground and breaking up things, I just thought, well, if she's just in a hole, that's not going to really help. But then, yeah, that antline description really made a lot of sense. You've got something that is got a huge mass to it. And so if you can destabilize all the stuff around it to where it can't get a purchase, then that's even better than being in a deep hole, because it'll try to climb out and things will just crumble underneath it because it's all cracked and messed up around it. So that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, even moving further on, he throws up barriers of either just dust and debris or actually giant chunks of stuff to block things. And so he uses it very effectively.
Again, there's so much tension going on in here. Noelle's use of this two-dimensional vista, the use of the circus, and just her physical prowess trying to use her bulk and her mass to try to escape from the antlion hole. Wildbow's really able to keep the tension pretty high throughout all this and stay. His world that he's built at this point it's solid, and we're still staying within the rules of this world. I don't think at any time during this point in the battle do we see anything that we kind of takes us out of it. Do you, Andy?
No, I didn't have to press the believe button, as we used to say about some things, where it's just like, hold on, what? I don't know. Come on. This all seemed to hang together really well. The only thing that jumped out at me a little bit, and part of it is because we don't know them very well, but if it were me and I was Grace, I don't know that I'd be okay just jumping in and trying to kick a baby Endbringer in the head. I'd be like, you know what, y'all got this. I'm just gonna hang back.
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah,
it just doesn't seem like that's good. But I know if she's got superpower, then she's got that. She can make it impervious in one area or whatever. And but dang, that took some serious bravery, I think.
What was your impression of this battle at this point, Tone? There is so much going on. Did you find this part of the story compelling?
Yeah, it was yeah, as Andy said, there's a lot of tension, definitely. I'm trying to, like, how did I feel? Yeah, I was just like, yeah, Noelle's just definitely a problem, and and as with like a lot of things in the story, like, yeah, I remember feeling feeling the same frustration of Taylor, like, man, like these heroes aren't taking this seriously. And
yeah, they've got reinforcements, but again, would they have been better off calling in the big guns? Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see on that.
One thing, though, I think that's a great point, is that, Eidolon, because of his nature and having to kind of swap stuff out, he's there, he's doing great, and then he just like ghosts them, for a while. And they're like, where'd he go? What's he doing? And at one point, Regent says, I hope he doesn't accidentally take us out. And Taylor's like, yeah, but I agree, but she's half serious about it. I'm like, I can almost see that happening. You don't know if he's just, all right, I'll do, let's see, molecular disassembly. That'll be my power. And then he just turns everything into a giant gray blob. And you're like, our friends were all there. Oh, sorry. We got Noelle though. We're good.
And he kind of walks up to that line as we're moving further into the chapter where he pulls out that desiccation. And Tecton, the irony here, Grace is a believer, as we talked about in our previous episode, where she was defending Idolin. Like, hey, this is, he's the guy. Of course he knows what he's doing. And then when the battle is really going sideways for the squad, he pulls out this desiccation power and begins to affect everyone. And that's where Tecton's screaming at him, saying, hey, you're killing her. Why are you doing this? I think he's kind of all our voices at that moment.
I agree.
Gru pulls out he's been fighting for decades here, and maybe he decides that he has to pull out this card in order to keep another Endbringer from being fully realized. And he's not wrong. But was that the best option at this moment? Who knows? But, Taylor says, hey, well, in his defense, maybe he doesn't realize that Grace is still alive. Maybe he thinks she's already dead. And then the travelers show up. They try to stop Noelle. They're with the team. They're with everybody who's fighting against her. The first indication we have of their arrival is 2 shots to Noelle's human form, and that doesn't take her down. Bit of a surprise, Andy?
Not really. I don't know. It's almost like Noelle's body is just kind of a figurehead at this point. I mean, there's so much other stuff going on. It's like another appendage. And it seems like it's all intertwined, that there's all sorts of stuff spread throughout the whole creature. And so I wasn't too surprised that didn't do much. I was a little surprised based on what the travelers had said earlier, though, that they would show up and participate. But then they kind of explain that as it moves forward.
Yes, they had a pact. And this is the realization of that. It was either Genesis or Sundancer said, we made the pact together to get home, or if possible, fix Noelle once we knew what was going on. And if things got really bad, we'd stop her. And this is things getting really, really bad. As I said, the shot from ballistic doesn't work. Noelle's human form regenerates. She seems to have this bottomless well of whatever that keeps replacing lost matter. And yeah, let me read this quote from Ballistic. The old Noelle is long gone. Do you think she would have survived getting shot like that? Noelle didn't answer. You have her memories, nothing more, Trickster said. As we're moving toward the end of the chapter, I wanted to ask you, Tony, the betrayal by Trickster. Was this inevitable? Did you see this coming? Was it obvious? Should I have had a clue?
Obvious or not, I don't know if it was meant to be obvious, but I think there was definitely a lot of foreshadowing there, if I recall, from even just how Kraus was in the interlude. I think, his relationship with Noelle and his personality, like he's kind of a dick. It seems like I would expect a dick move from Trickster at any given point. So I wouldn't say that it was probably meant to be obvious or not, but maybe his betrayal probably was inevitable, given the circumstances. And Noelle, tugging at the heartstrings.
Right. Andy, what do you think? I mean, I think all-consuming could be his emotional feelings toward Noelle. So again, I'll ask you, did you think it was inevitable? Should I have not been surprised when it happened?
No, I totally was shocked. I mean, I almost threw up my hands and cheered when Dancer was like, all right, I'll use my fire. I'm like, yes, finally. I mean, this seems like the ultimate thing. Just roll one of those big old sunballs down the road and boom, problem is gone. It's just ash. And so I thought this was great. But as you are talking about it with Tony, Kraus and Noelle's relationship, and they do hint on it in I guess it's actually a repeat of stuff that was said earlier, but they remind us, Wildbow reminds us of it in the next interlude, that their relationship was very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And Krauss, he definitely has a huge sense of guilt of how this has gone. And he's trying to do what's best, but as Tony said, he is kind of a dick. So his attempts at being trying to fix things are often dicked up. But
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's thinking, I think, that when Noelle says, "All right, I'll let you do the Sundancer tap dance on me when you give me what I want," and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Well, I should let her have some sense of closure." There's almost like, yeah, she's just getting all the bad stuff here because of what happened to her. That was my fault. And
Right.
so try to at least help her feel like she's going out on a positive note kind of thing. But yeah, I didn't see it coming at all.
I liked the sense of horror in in Skitter's realization as she comes to understand. Her mind gets there, and it's like, oh my god, Gru, and then Trickster is already moving, and then boom, Gru's gone, then this person gone, and the next thing you know, she's being enveloped by Noelle's body. Did you feel that sense of horror and realization, Andy? Well, I guess, you did. You kind of said that. Yeah.
Yeah, the bottom just kind of dropped out there. I was like, as I said, I think before Tony got on, that they've been on a razor's edge. Any of these battles could have gone either way, it seems like, and it's bound to be at some point the numbers are gonna come up bad for them. But dang, to be sucked up by the giant Noelle pudding, that was just horrible. Because anything else, you're like, oh, I got some kind of chance.
Mm-hmm.
But then, this last line is just so grim. Absolute darkness and the pounding flow of Noelle's blood in my ears. So it's like you're in this disgusting womb-like environment, and it's like, how
are we going to get ourselves out of this mess? Yeah.
Yeah, I expected the next line to be the end.
Yeah, I feel that a lot through the whole story.
Yeah, Tony knows how many times I text him. I share with you, Andy, how often I would text Tony, oh my god, I can't believe this happened during my first read. It was
Wildbow just keeps finding a way to make impossibly dire situations and then make them more impossible and more dire.
And that brings us to the end of chapter 8. And before we move on into the interlude, I wanted to pose a couple of questions to Tony. And the first one has to do with the discussion that some of the commenters were having on the YouTube page about Pigot and her attitude toward capes. So I want to read part of this question, part of this statement from Sword Crab. And then, Tony, I want you to maybe give your thoughts on this. And Sword Crab said, I disagree with the commenter that said Pigot is anti-cape. If you reread her section after the Nilbog fight, you can see how she might have gone that way, yeah. But then Calvert explains how he shot his captain to improve his chances and how he wished he had triggered. And after that, Pigot realized that the problem isn't the capes. There's all kinds of, quote, effed up people with or without powers. So my question, Tony, would be, do you think Pigot was anti-cape, or did she have a tough attitude, and was that just part of the job? Was she, single-minded in her drive to accomplish the mission?
I don't think those things are exclusive, but I think the sentiment that she is a bit anti-cape is still valid. Like, even if her position might have changed slightly with her conversation with Calvert, with realizing that people were the problem. Like, as with anything, people are always the problem. Now they just have a lot of power, right? I think, like, for me, I always kind of interpreted her as the Amanda Waller type. If you're familiar with her from the DC series, DC comic series. she basically is also that tough as nails, tasked with doing the dirty work of the government to basically serve humanity's better interests. So that kind of requires you to kind of suspend a lot of your emotions and kind of be kind of heartless and cruel in order to really operate on an ends justify the means model. And so like she's aware, of, like, I think I remember one part of her interlude, she was talking to Kid Win, and she recognized him as, being a kid still, even though he's a cape, and recognized that he was terrified of her. And it's like, at any given point, any one of these people could easily just enter. Like she is so very powerless, but posturing and intimidation are some of the few tools that she has, while that illusion of authority and power are maintained in these systems. So as long as these capes continue to believe in it, then maybe she could still get some work done, and she still has to kind of use these tools as they are. Whether or not she has lingering resentment towards capes or not, it doesn't. She just has to do what she has to do. I think that's at least the way that she's reasoned it, because like I think in the end she said like, the whole world has gone crazy, and she's the only one who's sane or something to that.
Right, I remember that. And then next, Tony, I want you to what was your thoughts about arc 17 compared to other arcs? We put a poll up on the YouTube page on the community tab, and I asked the question of folks, arc 17, did you like it a little more than most arcs? Did you like it a little less, the same, and why? What was your feelings on it?
I thought the travel arc was good. I don't think I would say it's my favorite arc. As most of the time for me, I was a really big Taylor fan for most of the story. So I was it took me a lot longer to really appreciate the interludes as much, until a bit later, when I realized like, okay, like these are all really good, but I was just so focused on like wanting to see what happened to Taylor that I didn't really appreciate the extra world building as much as I did on my initial read. But yeah, in the hindsight, it's great. He does these kinds of really cool interlude arcs in each of his stories, where you kind of just get a whole arc of a whole different perspective of another group that's not central to the story, but they usually are involved in a pivotal moment of some kind. And like everything that led up to it was really cool. The information we got while not being involved with the Undersiders was really good. Getting more insight into how terrifying the Seamerg was really cool. Like I really like anytime the Inbringers are involved. But yeah, I guess I think it's good. It's not my favorite, to answer the question, but I don't dislike the arc for all the things that it brought to the table.
Cool. All right. And speaking of one of those times where Wildbow brings in some ancillary characters to kind of flesh things out, we move on to bonus interlude number 4, and we start off meeting Dr. Jeremy Foster. Dr. Foster is woken up by a gunshot. Again, Andy, we have a situation where the initial character that we meet is not who the story is going to be all about. Another kind of a surprise, where are we going moment.
Definitely. And, I don't know if it's the format we're doing or just Wildbow making my head spin around, but every time some person is introduced now that I don't recognize, I'm like, was he brought up before? Was this the dude from interlude 3.75 that was eating a bean burrito off of that street truck?
You have to think that way.
Around.
You have to think that way, because we are far enough, and I've said this before, we are far enough in the story now where the world, I won't say it's complete, but it's fully developed, and you have to ask yourself those questions. Oh my God, where was that guy? Did we see him before? Just like you said. Yeah.
Right.
Dr. Foster, yeah, he's got himself a little fortress there. Security guards, a panic room. He kind of lives high on the hog. He's got a painting, and then he furnished a room around the painting. I mean, excess wealth. I mean, I'm a capitalist. I can appreciate that, but this was this was kind of bad.
It's like buying a new set of tires and then saying, you know what, these are too nice for this car. I got to buy a new car.
That's kind of where he was. It's not till several paragraphs down that we find out that the intruders who are breaking into his home are actually Fault Line's crew. It was nice to see them again. Yeah, Andy?
Oh yeah. I like this group and their interlude. I really enjoyed early on. And I really liked how, Gregor played into various things, especially helping with taking down the buildings and stuff and making sure fires didn't spread with his ability to have different things shoot out of him. So it was neat to see them again.
Tony, I think I like Fault Line's crew more than the Travelers even. She's definitely a professional. And I mean, they are mercenaries, and she's all about their reputation.
Yeah, I mean, Fault Line's crew is really cool. I think it more just has to do with how compelling like a lot of their kind of backstories are. Like with half of them being Case 53s, you're just like you kind of feel for them, like just wanting to achieve their goals and be happy at some point. But yeah, I mean, as a crew, I'm a little bit torn because the like Fault Line's crew, because I guess I like that they were kind of antagonistic toward Tattletale especially, but I mean that's a kind of a given with how Tattletale operates. But, that's what makes them fun and interesting, like their banter. But yeah, I do wish they also had like a little more screen time sometimes too.
I think that's a great point. I hadn't really clicked with me was that, usually mercenaries kind of have this bad connotation, but they're doing it for a particular reason. And so that gives them, I give them a pass for that. They're not your typical gun for hire group. And they're trying to figure out how to help their folks while they're doing this. And yeah, the mercenary stuff is a means to an end, and that's a little unfortunate, but at least they're trying to figure out and help out the Case 53s. So thanks for pointing that out, Tony.
They are there to see Dr. Foster because he is another link in the chain to discovering the information that they need. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it was back in the first interlude with Fault Line and her team where Gregor had hired the team to find out more info on their status as Case 53s. And this is where we are at this point. They've, for whatever reason, they've come to this Dr. Foster. Turns out that he's got a history with Labyrinth. And she was in some kind of asylum. Oh, we did know that, didn't we? That at one, because she was in an asylum with Burnscar, wasn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong. Tony, you remember? Wasn't Labyrinth in an asylum with Burnscar? Do you remember that?
I don't remember. I know she was in an asylum. I don't remember if Burnscar was the one that was. I think
because
it
was during the S9, the S9 interlude where Burnscar came to visit. It had to have been Labyrinth.
Yeah, it was
okay,
with
cool.
Burnscar.
All right, so they are there to get information from Dr. Foster about the Case 53s. Turns out he was spying, corporate espionage, I don't know, for several governments. And we're not surprised by this. In a world of capes, as I said last episode, governments are going to do what they're going to do to try to seek an advantage when it comes to capes. Fault Line came onto his trail because he was a little bit too free with his spending. Nice bit of detective work, huh, Andy?
Yeah, they must have some good forensic accountants working there. But Yeah, I mean, he's in an affluent neighborhood, and everybody, he doesn't look out on the surface any different than anybody else, but everybody else is hawked to the eyeballs
Mm-hmm.
to support their lifestyle. And here he's got all this money in the bank. He doesn't have the debt. So he tries to say, no, I know I do have a bunch of debt. And they're like, no, you don't.
After some interrogation, after breaking him down and loosely threatening him, letting everyone know that he'd been found out, I should say, he does give up information to Faultline and her team, enough so that they decide that they need to head to the Madison containment area. And at this point, we have found out that the Seamerg had been to North America twice in 4 years. And, Madison was the location of the second attack. The Endbringers they're beating down the world. And we touched on that a little bit there last episode.
Yeah, it seems like they're ratcheting things up. And, as usual, the government tries a knee-jerk reaction to do things, and it goes wrong. Imagine that. Sorry, Tony, if you haven't been listening to our other stuff, I've definitely leaned more and more anti-government. And it all comes out online. I hope they're not listening right now. But
don't worry, FBI agents, we're just joking.
Tony, before Andy gets further in, the use of the tattoos on the people who are released from Seamerg quarantine zones. I'm jumping way back. During the Travelers interlude, Armsmaster and Mirden showed up. He said that was going to be a bad idea, that the presidential directive was going to be a bad idea. And that seems to have been the case. Am I thinking that correctly?
I don't remember. I mean, it probably is.
Because people
but I don't remember the exact aftermath of that decision.
It says that people outside the quarantine zone in protest, some of them began getting the tattoo because some folks who were released from the quarantine zone, they had the tattoo, and then they get threatened, they'd get assaulted because they were identified as possibly being victims of scheming from the Seamerg. So
right,
you could see that not working out.
So conceptually, yeah, it's definitely a bad idea across the board. Because I mean, you obviously don't want to be prejudiced, but there's powers at work, and the Seamerg is pretty terrifying, and her power is also mysterious to the majority of people. We only have a rough idea of it because of the information we're given as readers. I don't think the average person truly understands how much of a liability to humanity someone who's been interacted or affected by the Seamerg could be. But
Andy, how did you like this tie-in? We've got a nice another closing of the loop. This is Madison, Wisconsin, where the Travelers came from, and this is where the next clue in the case for Faultline's crew. Nice tying together of some events.
Definitely, yeah. And I think Wildbow does a really good job of that, and I should trust him more. It's easy as I'm reading this, like, well, where's this going? Is this ever going to get, and then I'll read a few sections later, and oh, that's right, that's still hanging out there. Is that ever going to be? And sure enough, it comes around. It just sometimes takes some time, but yeah, this is great. But yeah, to touch on the ripple effect, I think I shared with you from that story that I had read a while ago, where there was a similar character, and if anybody, one person finds out that the other person's had contact with this horrible entity, and he said, oh, well, among my people, anybody who's had contact with them is instantly executed. We don't allow them to say anything, do anything, touch anything. And here he's been, living with the guy for a long time, and it's like, oh, geez, how have you messed up my life now?
Right.
but there's just no way to know the seeds that have been planted by something like that then keep going further and further out on those ripples. So I get where the idea of the tattoo was not a good idea, but it's like maybe, I don't know, they all should have put on an island somewhere or something, because you don't know how that cancer is going to spread.
So Fault Line and her team, using Labyrinth's power, they get themselves to Madison. They enter in going through the wall that's surrounding the city. And after some exploration, they run into, I can't say that woman's name, Matryoshka, Maddie. Matryoshka. Yeah, I think that's it. Again, closing another loop there. She's been hanging out with another group of survivors, another group of people who are inside the quarantine zone. And there was a nice scene where the other Case 53s, Neuter and Gregor and Shamrock, they coax this Maddie into revealing herself as one of them. Pretty well put together scene there. I like that. What do you think there, Andy?
I like that scene a lot. I mean, it's a bit of a, I've seen that kind of thing before where it's kind of like a survivor type environment, post-apocalyptic thing, and people band together, and it turns out one of the people that joins the group is actually one of the people that folks are against or have problems with, but they're able to slide under the radar until somebody says, "Oh, wait, you're one of us." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you've been with us the whole time." But it's neat the way the Case 53s then try to make her feel like, all right, we understand you were trying to hang out with these folks, and now they're ready to kill you, but you are part of our group, whether you knew it or not. So why don't you come with us? So I thought that was pretty cool. But I do have to skip back to a couple other things that I really like.
Go ahead.
One was the way Fault Line made the hole through the wall. I love that description. How as she touched a finger and then the other and then a toe, the whole. It was a really neat word picture that Wildbow put together there. And then I also like the hair extension thing with the hidden flexible rod with the spikes in it that, if somebody grabbed her hair, it would tear away and stab them, impale their fingers, and she'd get to escape. So I thought that was a pretty cool little thing. I might have to incorporate that into something down the road.
Again, I think that speaks to how well put together this unit is. She's an effective leader, if a little bit of a, hard butt there, but she trains them when they were doing their surveillance, when they were walking the area. She said, this is how we're going to investigate. You go out this way, you go out this way. This is how you return back to our center point where L is going to be. And again, the word professional is what comes to mind when I think of these guys. I don't know if under different circumstances, the Undersiders, if they were freelance, if that's the kind of relationship they could have developed. Tony, do you see that? You see the comparison I'm trying to make between Fault Line's crew and the Undersiders? Could the Undersiders, if they were on their own and not beholden to Coil, could they have developed a kind of a professional working relationship?
Yeah, I could see a world where they might have been more of just professional mercenaries rather than just outright villains under Coil's thumb. But at the same time, I'm not sure. Like it would make sense for maybe Tattletale and Gru, but I just have a tougher time seeing that with like Regent and Rachel.
Good point. Yeah, Rachel, I could see being the outlier in that possibility, just because of her nature. Regent, I guess, would stick around until such time as he's bored. And then it would be like, okay, well, y'all keep on doing the mercenary thing, and I'm going to go over here and go do my thing. So Fault Line and her crew get Maddie, convince her to return with them back to their hotel. Andy, did you catch the statement where when she was having something to eat. She was watching TV and she had never seen it before. They didn't have anything on her world.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at that. I didn't know if that meant she came from just a really poor area, or I wasn't sure what to make of that. I saw it and I just couldn't put two and two together on that one.
Well, we know that Professor Haywire opened that portal to Earth Aleph.
Mm-hmm.
The Seamerg replicated his portal technology and spilled in critters from God knows where.
Okay.
Tony, would we be surprised if the Seamerg, I mean, we don't know where those creatures came from, do we, at this point in the story?
Okay. No. We do not know where the
no, not the Endbringers, but when the portal that she opened, in Madison, we know it went to Earth Aleph and got the travelers, but there were other critters coming through also. So when this is a long way of saying Maddie being shocked to see TV for the first time because it wasn't on her world, we shouldn't be surprised by that, because who's to say what world she came from?
I just don't recall.
Don't worry. Sorry. No problem. So they get back to the hotel and there's a message for Fault Line. She and Shamrock head down to the desk to retrieve the message. And she's surprised by the fact that there's someone waiting at the front desk.
Oh wait. I didn't remember now.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think, if I recall, those creatures, we do know what those were.
Okay, is it?
I don't know at this point of the story. It's tough because I don't remember if that happened before or after.
Okay, then hold off on that. Let's see here.
Yeah. we do definitely know. Okay. Though, I think.
Then we will hold off on that and presume that that's something that Andy's going to discover at a little bit of a later time. So Faultline and Shamrock head down to the desk to retrieve her message. And there's a woman waiting at the desk to be served. Nice clothes and a fedora. She tips her hat at Faultline as the two ladies come down to the desk, and she heads up in the elevator. Now, Faultline's got some pretty good spidey senses going on there, Andy, don't you think?
Well, as we're going back through this for the podcast, I haven't traveled a lot for business, but I can't remember ever arriving at a hotel at 4 a.m. I mean, that's really weird. So yeah, I think Faultline's is good to pick up on it, but I think I would have picked up on it. I'm like, what the heck is somebody checking in this time of day for? The fact that they're in pursuit of information as well as being a mercenary crew. You know, they're probably on heightened alert most of the time anyway.
True.
But yeah, this jumped out at me as being pretty obvious that something's rotten in Denmark. So
indeed. She gets her message, puts in a phone call, and it's to Tattletale, her BFF in Brockton Bay. And Tattletale wants to borrow Labyrinth for some reason. I do very much enjoy the fencing between the two of them. Tony, the relationship, the antagonistic relationship between Faultline and Tattletale, one of your more favorites, or
Oh yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah, it's like, I mean, that's why Tattletale's generally a fan favorite. That's just like her quips and her power basically just let her verbally beat up everybody. And it's always really entertaining.
Because I think this is fun because, again, Faultline is nobody's fool. She comes across as put together. She's a soldier. She's got a squad. She knows how to operate. And then Tattletale, who she loathes, clearly just smacks her down. And it's like, I got this answer here. I got this answer there, and I'm already ready for you. Yeah, I know you're going to want this much money. And boom, yeah, I got your account. And it just irritates Faultline to no end.
The one that got me.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
just,
sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
oh, I was to say, yeah, she's just ready frame one for every single objection that is possibly going to get thrown out. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then
Andy.
the cherry on top of it is when Tattletale says, "Well, I want Labyrinth because I think I understand her power better than you do."
Yes.
And it's like, what? Come on. That's just
Just smacking her
just
in the face with it.
yeah, that's just twisting it after you stuck it in the back.
Tattletale does Tattletale things and nettles Faultline, and she's irritated. And Tattletale, I can imagine on the other end of the phone, being pretty smug and pleased with herself. I should point out that after the young lady in the fedora had gone up the elevator, Faultline had Shamrock go back to their hotel room to tell the rest of the squad, "Hey, why don't you guys start packing up? There's a chance we may have been made. Let's be on the alert just in case." So after calling Tattletale, that's when she heads back up to the room and she hears Elle screaming. And she gets into their hotel room and just is stunned by what she sees. This group of very capable capes has been just taken apart. Andy, what were you thinking when that went down?
Well, my first thought, I misread the part about Matryoshka, and I really thought that maybe she had gone off the deep end or something had been triggered with her. But then I reread it. I'm like, no, wait a minute. She looks all messed up, but she's been attacked. And I just thought, dang. So this one person all dressed nice and everything, and it did seem like it was somebody I expected, but they just went off. And yeah, this group looks totally devastated.
I think I don't know if I should say this. See, Tony, I'm struggling here because I think there's something that Andy should see. There's a connection that he should make, and I don't know if I should.
Should I
go
should
ahead?
I take off my headphones for a second? And
no, nah, bro, no. Will I be spoiling anything if I kind of indicate to Andy who this young lady might be?
That's the thing. I'm not sure because I was looking back through and the comments know who this person is, but I'm not sure if it's supposed to be outright obvious.
Okay, then
because the comments are very
right, and I don't let him go
time.
in through the comments. I edit everything to try to avoid any obvious spoilers. So, Andy, you know what? During our next, no, there is not enough there. There's not enough there. So, you will come to understand some stuff in the future, and then what happened here to Faultline's crew is going to make sense. So, I will say that I will say that much. So I'm not going to connect the dot because I think it'll be much more enjoyable for you when it comes full circle for this, and you can say, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on." So Faultline gets in the room. She sees Shamrock's got a broken hand or something along those lines. Spitfire's got this hat full of goo on her face and she can't breathe. And poor Gregor is laid out because he's been burned, and Neuter's broken, and Elle has got her hand impaled on the couch. So this one person apparently has just, as I said, just destroyed this group of capes who know their business, who are no slouches. And as we're moving to the end of the interlude, Faultline. Oh, go ahead, Tony. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just doing some quick digging. I don't think this character was explicitly named, but they were described at the end of 14Y.
Then in that case, let's leave that there. So, Andy, if you want to drop back and reread that, that's out there.
Okay, cool.
You can make that connection. And that's what I was struggling with, Tony. I couldn't remember where, but I didn't think there were enough raindrops or enough breadcrumbs, I should say.
No, I think there might be, because I think there was also one in 15.
Okay.
I'll have to keep digging for you.
No, okay, well then I think it's
I think the character is named at this point, but yeah, it's mostly this character is a boogeyman. Okay. So yeah, like you're still not supposed to know too much about them, but they have appeared in the story, and I think this is the first you get to see a direct aftermath of what they're capable. All right,
so Andy, if you have some free time and you want to speculate or dig through those previous interludes, maybe you can see something and piece that together.
All right, cool.
Anyway, as I was saying, as we're heading to the end, and Fault Line helps Elle, whose hand is impaled on the couch, and there's a piece of paper underneath it. And Fault Line removes the piece of paper, and it says, "Final warning, C." Somebody wanted to make a point there, and I think the point has been made. Wouldn't you say, Andy?
Yeah, exclamation point, I'd say. Definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, this is one of my favorite characters in the whole story, though, by the way.
Oh, and they're just showing up? What the heck?
No, they showed up. They showed up previously, just not. They never showed what they could do. They were always just kind of a looming,
kind of a presence.
Figure. But yeah, they were. I just found it. They were named in the Arc 15 interlude. 15
is that the Alexandria one? Okay. Yeah. All right. Then let's go ahead and share that with them. Andy or Tony, why don't you go ahead and give them the deets on that?
Well, if you remember when you got information about where Legend, Alexandria, and Eidolon got their powers, right? All right. So they were talking to the character named the Doctor. And do you remember the other character that was with the Doctor?
Vaguely.
She was also there when Alexandria got her powers.
Were they in the... no. I'll just go back and read it. I'm not... Okay. I'm getting to the point where I think I need to almost have a spreadsheet to try to keep track.
Valid.
Bro. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think it's cruel and unusual punishment that I only get to read 3 little pieces at a time. You know, if I were just blowing through this like everything, I think it would stick in my head better. But I think it's time to go back and start saying, all right, let's connect the dots here and build a timeline. You know, all right, who's who. So
yeah, I think Tony's right. Go back and reread that interlude that he recommended.
Okay,
it'll help at least identify who this person is for you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And with that, we will move on to the final item we are going to cover, which is the last interlude 18. Yeah, interlude 18. And we start off with Noelle in her mind, and we're reliving a memory. And this memory is the night that the team qualifies for the Nationals. I believe the name of the game is Ransack. They're challenging another group, and they come out victorious. Hats off to Wildbow for building this game. I don't know if Ransack is a real thing, or if this is something he came up with in the development of Worm. Is it just one of those things that he put in great detail? Andy, you have any problems with, or how did you like this game as it was developed as you were reading it?
I think I would play the game. It sounded pretty cool. Kind of combined a couple of different things. You know, I don't know that I've ever played an RPG kind of the game where you respawn.
Oh yeah, that's because if I recall, I just remember it being a MOBA, so I was like just thinking it was like Dota or League of
Oh, okay.
Legends,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I played, back in the day, like Unreal Tournament and that kind of thing, and where it's just first person shooter and it's you against everybody else and that kind of thing. But this would be kind of a cool idea where you factor that into your attacks, that you'll come back and hopefully, as Noelle is going through this, hey, if I can just buy some time, then the respawn timer will time out for the other folks and they'll be back and
Mm-hmm.
they can blindside stuff. And so it made for interesting game dynamics, I think. And yeah, I like I said, for on Steam, I'd play it.
As a storytelling tool, using this memory of an actual event, it was a great way to show Noelle's capability as a team leader, as a field general, someone who can, as Ballistic said, she can think on the fly. She's very intuitive in her how she marshals her forces. This was a good way to show that.
I agree. Yeah. And also to show kind of the positive and negatives of the other people.
Oh,
Like at one point, stuff doesn't go right for Cody and he in real life kicks something. He's just so mad that it's like, no, you got to focus. This isn't the end. There's going to be that response. So just chill out for a minute. Now, I've played with really good gamers sometimes where it seems like respawn is just another time for you to get instantly blown up. But it seems like this game has a little bit, you have a slight chance of survival off the spawn point. So that's good. But yeah, I think, yeah, she's really good at not only seeing the immediate stuff going on, but also kind of the long range planning and working through what else could be positive for their team.
mm-hmm. She had a very good sense of the battlefield, and seeing that memory, I think it helps us appreciate just what kind of danger the Undersiders are in facing off against this girl, this this creature. As I said the last episode, she's not just some random rampaging beast. She's an effective fighter, and she's a genuine danger to those who come up against her. So she comes out of this memory, and throughout this interlude, we get her negotiating, discussing with her other half. Pretty spooky, to say the least.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Andy. Did that increase your creeped out nature of this symbiosis between Noelle and her power?
No, if anything, it was kind of the opposite. Prior to this, I was thinking more that she was kind of fighting it, and it was this kind of implacable thing that was taking over.
Oh.
But in this, it was more of a acknowledgement that there was a second entity in there and that they were kind of almost negotiating who's going to be doing what, and they were started. I guess when I got creeped out a little bit was a little bit later where she said, all right, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know how to deal with this. So I'm just going to, give me another memory. Let me fugue out for a minute and you take care of the dirty work. That was a little grim. But this part I thought I was just found it more interesting, I guess.
Before we go too far, I do want to get this Regent comment. As he's being sucked, as he's being absorbed into Noelle's form, and he says, hey, monster girl, when you make my clone, do you think you could give him a goatee? I mean, do we really expect Regent to say anything different, anything less obnoxious?
That's still pretty next level, I think. I mean, it's one thing. He was already kind of fatalistic. So yeah. It's like, hey, if it's over in 2 years or if it's over today for me, whatever. But it's one thing to talk that, but then to actually kind of walk the walk. And when you're about to be slurped up to be able to come off with a comment like that, that's pretty cool. I raised my opinion of Regent at that point, I think.
Yeah, Alec just keeps growing on you. That's the story.
Yeah, I wanted you to comment on your thoughts about Regent up to this point. What were your feelings for him, Tony?
One of my favorite interludes was I call it Regent's Day Off. I was definitely a big fan because I like it was a bit of catharsis watching Sophia get hers. As cruel as it was, I was just like, yeah, she deserves it for messing with my girl.
Hear, hear.
Regent's Day Off. I wish you'd have told me that.
Oh, that's classic.
Wow. Okay.
And so yeah, like given what he kind of had to go through, it makes sense for him to be comically detached because humor is one of the most common ways to subvert trauma, and Alec definitely had a real message.
Very true.
So I was like, oh well, if this is how I'm gonna go out, there's worse ways I could.
Andy, let's take the 34,000 foot view of this interlude, and we can bounce back and forth on this and not necessarily worry about running through the timeline specifically. But there were several times, I think, where Noelle entered that, as you said, fugue state, and her body kind of ran amok. We got scenes with her and Krause. And, okay, we know Krause can be manipulative. Is this feelings as seen from Noelle, are they legit? Is he manipulating her just to get into the league, get on the team, or does he really care for this girl?
Wow. This almost gets into kind of teenage psychology, I think, because depending on, part of it is based on Wildbow's, what he was going for, I guess, but trying to take it at face value, often, at least for me, and I'm hoping I'm not alone in saying this, and everybody's going to go, wow, Andy's messed up. But as a teenager, I didn't know oftentimes if it was something I was doing for altruistic reasons or if I was being manipulative. It was just like, oh, well, this is something and seems like a good thing to do, so I'll do it. I don't know if I shared this on here. I think I've told you before, but I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm man enough that I was in band in school. I also played sports though, but I was also, because it was a really small school, I was the whole low brass section, and I had to play all sorts of different parts on trombone. And so at one point in my senior year, I realized I had kind of a lot of leverage, and the band director was being kind of a turd. And so I just didn't show up to class. It's the first class of the day, and I just stayed in the cafeteria, had some extra breakfast, and just hung out. And then nothing happened. So I did it again the next day.
Oh, geez.
And then all of a sudden I got called to the office. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in trouble now. I guess I'll have to stop this. And it was actually the band director there in the office saying, hey, will you please come back to class? We really need you. And at the time I was just like, well, I'm sick of him being a turd. I don't want this to keep going on. So I didn't think of it as manipulative. But as I look back on it now, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so manipulative. I mean, it's like, how can I be any more of a brat about this? I mean, it's his job. He's the teacher. I can't just be like thwarting his authority, So it's,
no, I'm your advocate. You did nothing wrong. They were being indecent toward you, and this illusion of authority should not have shackles on your Brian. You were right to do what you did, and you got the respect you deserved, and I'm sure that their behavior was improved after that, wasn't it?
It was. You're right, but just Tony, you can be on every episode from now on. I mean, if you're gonna back me up like that, I feel so much better about myself.
Okay, I haven't watched the movie Whiplash, but I've seen the famous.
Oh, you have to watch it.
Like I can only imagine what it would be like if if he just decided like, no, I'm just not. It's like what the end of the movie would be like. He's just like, oh, I'm just not gonna show up to my psychologically abusive
Andy,
instructor.
have you seen Whiplash?
I don't think I have.
Oh, dude, we're gonna have to do a watch party and check that out.
Who's in that one?
Miles Teller, the guy who played Goose's son in the latest Top Gun.
Oh, okay, I know.
And J.K. Simmons, Mr. J. Jonah Jameson himself from the Spider-Man.
Okay, yeah. No, I don't think I've seen that.
Bro, J.K. Simmons. Oh gosh.
Yeah, this scene, like if you just watch like the clip of like one of the famous scenes from that movie, it gives me goosebumps. He's so terrifying.
Yeah,
it's so
we're gonna have even before we dip back into the Expanse, we're gonna have to check out this Whiplash movie there. But I think because you were in band, I was only in band a year. You did band for real, so I think you're gonna have some flashbacks in that. But anyway,
yeah. So, after that huge tangent that I led us on, so yeah, this is a really complicated thing with Krauss and Noelle, and I don't know if even Krauss could sort it out, but I didn't think of him as being manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the way they described him before he joined the group, or when he was like on his way, from his mom's house and that stuff, was just that he felt a little bit of an outsider. He recognized that he was kind of a dick, and that's kind of what made him an outsider. But he felt like he might be able to fit in with this group a little bit, except for maybe the one guy. And so it was just him wanting to belong. I didn't really feel like I felt like he could have been, if he really wanted to be manipulative, he could have.
Okay.
He could have been very manipulative. So it seemed like, if at all, he was trying to restrain himself.
And his feelings for Noelle were real.
Yeah, that's what I think. But I'm a romantic, so.
And Noelle is really a troubled young lady. Wildbow giving us this look at her struggle with her eating disorder. It rounds out the character. We are given enough clues beforehand to suspect that she's got some kind of eating disorder, but her struggle in dealing with food and her own personal issues, and then this relationship with Krauss on top of that. Tony, I guess you could say that she was the perfect target for the Simurgh, I guess.
I'm not sure. Well, everything was as it needed to be.
Okay, so maybe it's not fair for me to say that she alone was the specific target for the Simurgh. Maybe it's the totality of the travelers. Everything in the Simurgh's schemes, it was necessary for. I mean, it happened as it was supposed to, as the Simurgh would have dictated, and
yeah, everything is basically a giant Rube Goldberg for the Simurgh.
And grabbing this damaged girl, showing her these visions to make her only take half a potion, it all ended up where it was supposed to in the plans for the Simurgh. Andy, do you when we were in the Traveler's Arc, the only person we didn't know what the Simurgh showed him was Noelle. Well, now we have it. How did that color your thinking on this thing?
Well, I guess when we read the Traveler's Arc, my mind immediately went to the hints about Noelle and kind of the subtext that was going on between the interplay between Krauss and Noelle, where Noelle wanted to break up, but she then all of a sudden changed her mind, So there was this feeling like she knew it was a bad idea. She knew what was the thing that was making it a bad idea, but in the end kind of gave in to temptation, which is human nature. If you have a chance at love, you're going to take it, even if you think it might not be a good idea. And so I figured the fact that she wasn't sharing it meant it was probably pretty bad what she saw from the sea merc. So I wasn't taken aback by it, or it kind of it fit together, but it wasn't unexpected either. I figured it'd be something like what we saw.
So as the battle goes on, as we're back and forth between what Noelle was remembering and the present moment where she's in the fight, we get Grace and Tecton. Really, Tecton is pretty effective. He is much more so than I think I would have expected. I may have even said this. I was surprised at just how good of a combatant he was. Focus in a little bit on Tecton at this moment during a battle.
Yeah, I think he did great. I think the idea that he recognized that Noelle's mask could be kind of used against her, and that if he made the ground underneath her unable to support her weight, then she would be very restricted in her movements. Given his name and everything, it kind of makes sense that he'd have this almost geological sense, that he'd be able to, it doesn't really touch on it, but he probably knew exactly or had a sense of where the best places to strike were, that, there's already a fracture in the substrate here, or the bedrock is already fragmented over here. And so I'll hit here first. That'll move her more toward this unstable area, that kind of thing. But yeah, against a massive opponent like this, making it so that they don't have a firm footing, that's huge. And I think it was a great inclusion in the group. Things would have gone a lot worse without him there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think so. The thing with the deformities of the clones, Wildbow, time and time again, he gives us a description of what the Gru clone looks like, or what the Regent clone looks like. And so I think that's him successfully tying up what otherwise could be a loose end, which is, hey, if Noelle is generating clones that, quote, look like these people, Skitter, the supervillain, wears a mask. Wouldn't a naked clone of her be identified? Well, no, this clone has all these deformities. She's got all this gnarled nose and a mouth full of oversized teeth. And so I think Wildbow successfully quashes that possibility of a masked cape being unmasked via their clone.
Yeah, and I definitely had like generative AI imagery coming out.
Oh yeah, that
it was like,
that definitely would be yeah.
I've played around with some of that stuff, and it's like, yeah, about 10% of it's pretty good. Some of it is down like creepy. You're like, is that an eye coming out of her finger, or a finger coming out of her eye? Or that's nasty. But yeah, I thought that was really good. And it also showed that there's not if the power were there to make perfect copies, either it hasn't meshed all the way with Noelle the person, or the fact that she is got this major psychological flaw is causing her quote unquote creations to be skewed by that. Or
wait, do you recall Oliver at all?
He was the other person on the team who did not go out into the field.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
He drank the half a potion. Go ahead.
He drank.
Or Tony.
He drank her other half of that potion. So, like, at least I'm not sure if it's explicitly stated, but my inference was that Oliver's like ability was basically kind of always looking like good looking, and being able to like kind of take the appearance of like other people. I feel like that was the other half that Noelle needed to basically allow these things to be, I guess, more perfect or closer to perfect or normal.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because we talked about that a lot, Keith and I. That taking half the potion, you don't know if you're, what you're missing out on, and how only half of it is going to end up screwing things up. So
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't remember if at this point in the story they explained what that the potion actually consisted of for why it behaved the way it did for Noelle and Oliver. If you haven't seen it yet, then I think they explain it later.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't remember seeing that.
So we bounce back again to another memory from the battle, back to Noelle's memory, and it's the one where she's trying to break it off with Krause. Okay, Krause is an inexperienced teenage boy, and he's trying to make this connection with this girl. This poor girl has a pretty bad eating disorder. She's trying to be in recovery, and it seems like these two kids probably should not have been together at this point in their lives. At least definitely not for Noelle. But it's Wildbow painting this full picture of this character. We need to know just how damaged she was going into this.
For sure. That's kind of the capstone of the whole thing. And that's been alluded to with the other folks who have taken these potions, is that the more they fight it, the more they focus on the pain while it's going on, the transformation's going on, or the more psychologically unstable they are going in, the more likely things are going to be totally messed up on the other side. And so it stands to reason that this deep pain that Noelle has is going to really impact how she turns out after taking, and then, as we said just a minute ago, only half the potion.
Tony, let me see if this is fair to ask you. We know that Arc 17, Wildbow like put these chapters out daily, and Andy and I kind of said he kind of got into a groove, and I thought that bled over into Arc 18, where that smooth storytelling seemed to continue on into this arc. Would you agree with that?
What I don't remember. That's something I didn't know. He released Arc 17 daily.
I'm pretty sure that's what I read that he did.
Oh,
I think I said that right, Andy. Didn't I bring that up
Right.
to you?
Yeah, I remember that.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. But it was just the consistency. He hit this level and he just seemed to keep rolling with it into this arc.
Yeah, that might be fair. Because I mean, in general, I felt his improvements as a writer throughout the entire series, but
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, that might be a sentiment that's kind of agreed.
Okay.
Because I don't want to give spoilers, but I think the post arcs after this, there are a lot more criticisms of these arcs after this, which I mean, I still like them, but I can understand because the pacing is different for a bit, and then it does pick back up again.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, and I can see why people would make that. Yeah. Okay. It'd be interesting to see what Andy thinks when we get there. Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, these arcs were definitely some of the favorites from the community.
Well, and it's interesting though, I think how things have changed over the years. I can still remember when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark the first time, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't catch my breath. It's just nonstop action, there's never a
Mm-hmm.
break." And then you compare that to movies of today, and Raiders looks kind of like boring at times. You're just like, when is the scene in the classroom going to end? This is lame. Shouldn't he be going and getting some archaeological work somewhere? What's going on? And I've read a lot of sci-fi going all the way back to Jules Verne, and even kind of pre-sci-fi stuff, uh, Edgar Allan Poe and that kind of thing. And the pacing has just changed so much over the generations, and I really like the way Wildbow kind of changes the pace at times. I think maybe it's just because I'm old school, but I
Mm-hmm.
I get a little worn out when it's just so frenetic all the time. I like to take a step back a bit and take a breath, take a breather. So I kind of like that.
And as we're heading toward the end of this thing, Eidolon switches powers and uses some electrical orbs, and they seem to really damage Noelle to the point where she starts thinking that she may not even survive. It's her and Trickster. He's given her the Undersiders, and he's helping her in the fight. And he says at one point to her, "Hey, if he hits me with this gravity thing again, hits us with the gravity thing, I think I'm pretty much dead." She says, "Don't worry about it. It would knock these orbs out of the sky." Her body, her monstrous form is raging. It sounds like that's where all the hatred is welling up from in her. There's a symbiosis. There's a competitiveness with who's in control, and at some point she speculates on eventually, is she going to lose control to her body, to her form? Is that going to take over completely? Tony, I guess, I don't know if we want to call this a trigger vision. The vision that Noelle saw at one point, as we're heading toward the end, she says she was going to turn, she was going to give up her willpower, and she told her body, just make this a nice memory. I think, Andy, you had touched on that. You know what? Hold on, Tony. Let me aim that at Andy. Did this help in your formulation of what's going on in the story as she sees this pseudo trigger vision?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, this is definitely expanding on what was shared before in the story, and there's definitely the sense that there is a plan, that there's, all right, this goes in first, this is happening next, and then this will wait until some event theoretically has happened, that there is coordination here. These entities are not only individual, but they're kind of a collective as well. But that there's targets kind of, and it's weird. Noelle almost talks about that a little bit too as she's absorbing the other folks. She says, which ones smell stronger or more intense, like she can sense, almost like either they're kind of implying that definitely their power is better, but also that maybe it's a better match, that maybe this emissary that has come from this other place has bonded with the correct one, or a better connection than other ones.
She had said something along the line, she could, referring to the smell thing. Their smells were like Skitter and Gru and Eidolon. Their smell were as different from Capes who had powers, like they were as different from people who had the potential to have powers but didn't.
Yeah, and that was another interesting aspect of it, was that she almost could sense that potential too. And so that ties into this pseudo trigger vision that maybe they will get stuff later. And then also that, like, Eidolon's was tainted somehow, like she could almost sense it was unnatural. And so there's lots of different nuances in this, but I like where this is going. It almost seems like I think I've shared before, different stories I've read and stuff, and there was one where there were extraterrestrial beings that were monitoring Earth, and they decided when that our, like, extrasensory perception and stuff had developed enough that we could join the galactic milieu. We could join these other things in kind of a galactic government. And so they were always kind of monitoring and checking on things. And this seems like another possible aspect of that. Like maybe there was some kind of monitoring going on. Oh, the Earth is ready. Send in the folks, and then let's uplift them to this next level. And that, yes, there'll be a lot of growing pains, and it won't be pretty, but it'll get them to where they need to be. And it'll, as horrible as it sounds, the people that aren't up to snuff will be taken care of, and then the other folks will get enhanced or whatever. But yeah, I like the way this was described, and it definitely was thought provoking.
In the previous episode, I believe I asked you about, no, pardon me. I think it was Megafire 7 asked you about who was going to betray the Undersiders, or if the Undersiders were going to betray someone. At this point in the story, we have Trickster, who has clearly betrayed the Undersiders, and now we have Eidolon apparently doing so. I mean, he didn't get what he wanted out of this battle with Echidna. Or at this point, we find out that's what the PRT is naming this creature, Echidna. He didn't get what he wanted, and so she restates the offer. Let me go get my vengeance against the Undersiders, and I'll kill my clones, and then I'll let you guys kill me. So twice the Undersiders apparently are being betrayed, not just once.
Yeah, I guess Wildbow didn't think one betrayal was enough, and so he wanted to pile it on there. But and I don't know about this Echidna name. I mean, if I remember correctly, that's like a little mini anteater porcupine looking thing, right? I mean, it's not.
That is the animal, but there's also an echidna of Greek mythology.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm glad it's not just a little wimpy hedgehog looking thing.
In Greek mythology, the echidna was a half woman, half snake who lived alone in a cave.
Oh, okay. Well, that goes much better. That makes a lot more sense. Thanks for clearing that up. Because I was thinking they should just call her Killer Pudding or something like that.
Dude, the naming of Echidna. Did you catch that, Andy? The fact that the name came from a member of the PRT who had a 3-year-old daughter named Noelle, who happened to be Noelle Meinhardt, which was Noelle's name.
Yeah, I totally picked up on that, and I'd be like, yeah, we got to change that. I'm not having a junior Endbringer with the same name as my little kid. That's gonna mess her up for life, if we're still around. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll all be wiped out anyway, and it won't matter. But fingers crossed. Let's name Noelle the Beast something else.
There's a bit of a discontinuity, a bit of a time skip where she comes back from a memory having defeated Eidolon. And that's where he says, okay, he negotiates with her and he lets her go. Noelle or Echidna heads to where Tattletale is in Coil's old base. And she comes up against Tattletale and Bitch. Bitch is surrounded by a few of her dogs, and Tattletale is standing up on one of the railing, and she says, well then, Tattletale grinned. Her tightening grip on the railing betrayed the emotion she was trying to hide. Come on, do your worst. And that brings us to the very end of Arc 18. Let me start with you, Andy. And why don't you give me your overall impressions of Arc 18, bud?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, we finally got to see Dinah rescued and kind of the closing of that loop, and that was really good. And then of course we get that horrible news from Dinah that, yeah, once the sun comes up, all hell's gonna break loose. So better get going, better get that squared away. And then it's just trying to deal with Noelle ever after that. And then we've got, the Eidolon subplot where he's like, if I just push myself enough, then maybe I can reverse this trend, and that just doesn't seem to happen. So that's kind of a drag. And then the big one that got me was just the cheering for the travelers 1 minute, Sundance are having a little downtown Brockton Bay barbecue, and then the next minute the rug pulled by Trickster. So it was quite a roller coaster, as usual, as we've come to expect from Wildbow.
Tony, you want to give me your rough thoughts on Arc 18? You got anything you want to share?
I don't think so. I mean, I mean, as far as what I remember when I got there,
sure.
it was really interesting seeing how, Noel as that looming threat finally unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking like, oh yeah, give a pro gamer monster powers and we're a problem, So like I feel like a little proud, like oh yeah, gamers got to square off against the best of humanity. We come out on top.
Nice.
I did have a question for Andy though.
Yeah.
Regarding Eidolon, and it was like, do you have any thoughts on why Eidolon feels like he would get stronger, and then like his thoughts on his disappointment and not finding that power during this encounter?
Well, there was just an impression that he had. He had mentioned a couple times that he felt like there was this untapped potential. Like there was some kind of reserve or something that wasn't coming online. And it seemed like we had heard a couple times of like secondary trigger events, and he was wondering if maybe there was something along the lines with that. But then as I was reading this arc and Noel talking about kind of giving over control, then that got me thinking, well, maybe it's almost like an inhibition thing. It's not that he's not being pushed to the limit. It's that he's
Letting
set up
go.
some kind of artificial barrier. Yeah, like he's not letting go. So I don't know. It was thought provoking though.
So you think that right now it's a mental block that he's having?
Well, either that, or again, in the course of this, we were talking about how well the fit might be between a person and their passenger, and maybe Eidolon is able to detect that the passenger has more to give, but maybe he doesn't have the right interface to be able to tap into it or something. But it seems like he knows that there's more there. It's just hard to know how to get to it and what might be holding him back.
Okay. Awesome. Good question, Tom. And now it's time for Andy to announce his choice for key character of the arc. Whether hero or villain, cape or civilian, Andy will identify the characters that stood out to him, whether it's for good or ill. Andy, who's your selection and why?
Well, I went back and forth on this one. This was tough. I mean, the obvious choice is Noelle. The whole thing pretty much revolves around her. And she is just kind of mind-blowing and mind-blowingly disgusting, depending on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely feel for her at times. The different betrayals that you discussed definitely jump out at me too. But then as we were going through this, I really had overlooked Tecton's participation and how important, like I said, if he was there,
mm-hmm.
this would have been a lot shorter arc, I think. And so I'm going to vote for Tecton. I think he was the key that kept him in the game as long as he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really impressed. I mean, at first I was just like, it was like an Ant-Man kind of moment. Tecton, what?
Yeah.
But no, I think he kicked butt. He did great in this, and he's my key character for the arc.
Excellent. Tony, any rebuttal? Any comment on Andy's choice?
No, that is his choice, and he gave good justification for it. There's nothing to rebut for an opinion.
Andy, you're messed up. You're drinking the bathwater again. Come on.
All right. Okay, then. Tecton is Andy's choice for key character of the arc. And with that, we are done for now. Tony, thanks so much for joining us once again there, bud.
I did have one last question for Andy, though.
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So, Andy, at this point in the story, you've seen like the most terrifying things basically up here, from the Endbringers to, the most deranged supervillains. Do you have any guess for what the end game for this story would look like and how our bug girl fits into it?
Wow.
Oh man. Well, I guess if I continue along the lines that I was speculating on earlier and trying to tie in the kind of the 2-year timeline that was predicted, I'm thinking that, the attacks are going to keep getting worse from either the Endbringers or things like Noel. And it's going to be one of those kind of battles of attrition where we're going to end up with just the kind of the best of the best against the worst of the worst, and then we'll have some small subset of humanity left over. Now, I'm going to go way out of line here probably and say, given that we know there are alternate realities, maybe there is some kind of more vast cosmic universal conflict that's going on, and that all these alternate realities are just kind of like gladiatorial combat, and these entities are trying to raise up the best defenders of the universe they can in all these different alternate realities, and then they'll pull them all together for one giant battle at the end.
Wow.
I love it.
Good question. Good reply there, Andy. So yeah, as I was saying, Tony, thank you. We're going to get you back on here again real soon. You up for another return?
Oh, of course. Yeah, anytime. Just hit me up.
Well, you got an open invitation. And thanks everyone for joining us. Please come back as Andy and I begin Arc 19 with all that entails. Until next time, take care.
And just to mirror what Keith said, thanks so much, Tony, for being here. Always enjoy chatting with you and bouncing stuff off of you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to look at the different points I can go back and review. I'm going to jump right back into those interludes and see what I missed and try to figure out who the mysterious woman with the fedora is.
Oh, she's so cool. Oh my God.
So I hope you come back next time and find out how cool I think she is too. And
yeah.
Thanks so much for coming along on this podcast journey with us. Until next time, we'll talk to you then.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.